Hey, this is Bethany Boring, and welcome to the Radical Care for Christian Counselors podcast. Today, as you can tell, I have a guest, but before we get started, I want to make sure you're in the right place. Well, first of all, if you are here today and you find yourself here for the first time, I really don't believe that is a mistake. I believe that you're here for this message, so I'd encourage you to stick around. But for those who may be checking us out for the first time, this is, like I said, the Radical Care for Christian Counselors podcast. And we're here mainly to help people that feel like they're in isolation, that are in overwhelm, mainly Christian counselors, mental health professionals, pastoral care leaders. And we want you to make sure that you connect with the community that you need to really dare to do more than just survive and to step out and thrive in your God-given calling. So with that being said, I am here today with Katie Hornor. I'm so excited to have her here. First time we connected was actually at the Hope Speakers Conference. I got to see her speak. I think I even did a workshop, and I'm like, okay, I've got to get her on the podcast. I'm just so excited. And so, Katie, if you come into contact with somebody, maybe for the first time, they don't know anything about you, how would you introduce yourself to them?
Well, one of the things that always turns head is when I tell people I'm the flamingo lady. Um, God, God took an unusual encounter with flamingos in the wild a few years back and taught me a whole lot of metaphors that I get to use in my coaching. I do marketing and business strategy coaching for faith-based entrepreneurs, and I've written quite a few books and get to speak now all over the world and just having a blast helping God's kingdom grow, helping our Christian entrepreneurs really embrace marketplace as a place to do missions and to see their secular work as a sacred mission field and a sacred calling from God. And so that's what we're all about. And we live in Mexico most of the year. We've been traveling in the States quite extensively this year. And just really excited to step into the open doors that he gives us, including your podcast. I'm so honored to be here.
Oh, well, we're so honored to have you. And I encourage anybody to pick up any of Katie's resources. Her story was just so encouraging to me to hear that at the Hope Speakers Conference and just how authentic you are. That's what I love about everything that you really put out there. It's like, here's my story. Here's what God's doing. Let's connect with you. And I love
Yeah.
that because so many other people try to spice it up in so many different ways. And you're just there. You're like, here it is. And let God take it and do with it as he may. So, right, for this part of the podcast interview, I want to focus on just a recent journey that you've been having and that I've gotten to notice that I'm so excited as a speaker to hear more about is your TEDx journey that you got to have. And I feel like I get you fresh out of this because this was just what, a couple days ago that you were there, right?
Yes, we're recording this just a couple of days after we got to go on the TEDx stage in Houston. So, yeah, it was quite the experience.
Oh, well, I cannot wait. And I know nothing really. I've gotten to see some of the posts. And so, really, when we talk about these exciting moments that are happening, we focus here, especially on the Step Out and Thrive podcast, is okay, what was God doing before? What did he do during? And then what is he teaching you now? And this is fresh after. So, I don't know if you got much of the after yet. But for you, okay, was this a dream? Was this a bucket list item? Was this something that you were working towards? I mean, obviously for TEDx, you have to submit your application. So, how did all this start?
Well, it started way back, I would say, in um, probably 2014, 2015. I've always been a natural teacher. That's one of my flamingo advantages is that God's given me a unique ability to connect with people through words and to be able to explain things in simple ways so the lights go off. And so as the Lord kept enlarging my vision to speak on bigger and bigger stages, I took my very first speaker training, I think, back in 2015. So I've been working on this, working on myself, doing all the other things as well, publishing books, publishing blogs, getting out there. We had a mastermind and a high ticket coaching program, a low ticket membership. Doing all the things
Yeah.
to gain the visibility. And it felt like when I look around, it's something I do often and teach my clients to do is to take an evaluation frequently, every month if you can, and just say, where are we
Mm,
going? Are we on track? And is there something like what's the next thing I need to learn or what's the next thing I need to do in order to reach those long-term goals that God has set in front of me? And
Yeah.
so TEDx came up as something that, I had a couple of friends who had done it because of some rooms I was in, some communities I was in. And I started thinking, like that would be really great as a door opener to get me on other stages if I could have that TEDx experience. And so I started researching, what does it take to do that? Who do I need to know? What do I need to do? What's the investment? That kind of thing. And a lot of people I think that watch from the sidelines like, oh, she's a TEDx speaker. That must be nice. Almost as if like it fell from the sky, like
Yeah.
there is a ton of work involved. I think that experience is probably the hardest intellectual thing I've done in my adult life. Okay.
Wow. Mm.
And I'm not like I have an 18-year-old. Like I've done some adulting in my life.
Yes. Just a little
And
bit.
so, it started with asking those questions is who do I need
Yeah.
to know? What do I need to do to get there? And yes, there's an application process. TEDx events are independently organized events all over the world. And so we have volunteers who say, yes, I want to organize an event. And then they get approved to do it. You have to go by the TED guidelines, which we can talk about again in a minute. And then you have to, they have to put out the form to get applications. People have to apply and get their application approved. But then there's a whole other process that happens once you've been approved. And so I knew that in this season of life, moving our daughter back to the States, because we live in Mexico, moving our
Mm.
daughter back to the States to go to college.
Yeah.
I'm still
Wow.
homeschooling four. We're trying to still grow our own business. All this, I was
Yeah.
like, there's no way I can do this by myself. And so I
Yeah.
actually hired help to be able to submit the applications. And I'll tell you, Bethany, over 9 months' time, we submitted 56 applications to 56
Wow.
different independently organized stages. And, I kept thinking, oh, we'll get it this month. We'll get it
Yeah.
this month, and the things kept coming back, and when the first line of the email says, your talk is amazing, but
Oh, yeah.
and so like
Wow.
all of those rejection letters just kept piling up, and I kept thinking, okay, Lord,
Yeah.
I have to trust that you know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And so we kept
Was there any
submitting, and
moment during all of that time when all that was happening, when all the rejections are happening? Because here you are, you're like, I'm putting in this time. I've got people with me. You're paying somebody to help out and do this stuff. So was there any part during this time where you're like, God, am I even supposed to be here? Like, how did you know to keep moving forward with that?
I don't have a tendency to question that. Generally, I'm pretty confident when God shows me a step, this is what I need to go. And I've had enough experience of walking with him or him walking me through things
Yeah.
that I know that I don't have to see what he's doing to know that he's doing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that's key because a lot of us feel like we have to see it all, know it all in order
Yeah.
for something to be working. And that's not the truth. That's not the way that God works. And so
Yes.
I just had to trust that, okay, you said do this, we're doing it. And until you change that assignment, this is still the
Mhm.
assignment. And so we kept
Thank you.
submitting. Finally, about 9 months in, we got a yes, right? And so the yes, and you don't, you could be submitting these things to all over the world. You have to be willing to travel, and you could get approved for one that's next week, or you could get approved for one that's 6 months from now,
Yeah.
right? Just depending on when they're going to host the event. And so we finally got approved in the first week in March for an event that was happening May 11th. And
Wow.
so between, that March 1st or 2nd, when we got the notice, and March 11th, we had to finalize our script. And so here again, I'm working with someone who I've hired as a coach to help me create the script that will be a TED approved script to meet all of their requirements. And that was a battle
Yeah.
because I'm used to speaking from an outline. Like I can get up and
Mm-hmm.
talk just I
Yeah.
could do an hour, I could do 3 hours, I could do all weekend if you want, right? From an
Yep.
outline.
Yep.
Um and and I'm pretty good at it, but I haven't had to memorize anything since junior high, right? And so to come up with a script that would have to be memorized and then it had to be approved. And there's all kinds of guidelines. The things that I talk about are not allowed on TED stages generally. Knowing who your God
Mm,
is, leaning into his
yeah.
leadership, listening to the Holy Spirit, seeking God's goals first, seeing your business as a ministry. Like that's what I'm all about. And here I
Yeah.
have this opportunity that's supposedly going to help my speaking career, and I can't talk about any of it. Right.
Wow.
And so that's
Wow.
where I was like, okay, God, you're going to have to help me be really creative. And he
Yeah.
brought to mind the book of Esther. And I
Hmm.
think you saw me share this the other day, perhaps, but he brought to mind the book of Esther because if you go back and read the book of Esther, it's real short, right? But God's
Mhm.
name is not mentioned
Never mentioned.
anywhere in that
Yeah. Yeah.
story. And yet God is visible in every
Every
moment,
part. Yeah.
right? And
So good.
so that was my prayer. That became my prayers. Lord, I'm not allowed to talk about religion in this talk. I'm not allowed to
Mm,
talk about the business that I do in this talk. You have
yeah.
got to show up and show yourself through the lines of this. And
Amen.
so, you know,
Wow.
working with the coach to write the script, get something that would check all the boxes, right? And then we had to submit it
Mm-hmm.
for approval. And the approval came back. I've got 3 weeks to get this talk memorized. And the approval comes back, and both the coach and the stage host are saying, you need to tell us more about how to find your purpose. I don't see that anywhere in your talk. And I'm like, guys, you're missing the point entirely. What am I not communicating right? This talk is not about finding your purpose.
Yes.
We all
Yes.
have a purpose that is God given. It's inside of us already. It just needs to be awakened and lived boldly. And so that was a real turning point because I could
Yeah.
finally feel like now I know how to say what I need to say in this. And it was
Hmm.
a friction point that God used. And doesn't he often do that? He puts us up against a
Yes.
friction point where we're just so frustrated until it finally becomes so clear that this is what we need to do. And
Love
so
that.
that was the moment where I was like, okay, I got to rewrite this. If the coach and the stage host is not getting it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I literally went back and I put in the script, the problem is not that our purpose is elusive or that it needs to be found. The problem is that we don't lean into the inner purpose we
Mm,
know we have and give ourselves
mm.
permission to live it,
There you go.
right?
It's huge.
And
Wow.
so, you know,
So is it just
and
that one line that you put in
just
there?
that just that one line shifted the entire talk and
That's
gave me much
crazy.
more peace about being able to do this in a way where, you know, yeah, if you don't believe in God, you could take it and interpret it any way you want, but if you're a believer, just that statement is going to light
Yeah.
you up, right?
So wait, so let me make sure I understand this right. So you have this one script that you've been probably practicing, putting it out there, memorizing a little bit, maybe even up to this point, and then that one line you're saying gave you the peace and yet also the confidence that okay, God, like now I see it. Now I see all the dots connecting. And so was this and my biggest question during all this because I am horrible at memorizing. Like that has got to be one of my biggest fears about speaking and doing anything like that. So as you got to practice, was there a difference? Because I don't know if you were memorizing any of this before you added that line versus memorizing after you
Yeah.
added that line. But how was that transition for you? How was that memorizing process for you? What did God do for you in that time?
Well, I hadn't memorized a lot of it. I mean, I've been reading it over every day, working on, you know, the small tweaks, the small
Yeah,
edits and things. But I hadn't really started memorizing yet because I needed it
gotcha.
to be approved. But we were running out of
Yes.
time because I had
Yeah.
to, you know, from the time that the script is approved, I have to have it memorized, halfway memorized in 2 weeks, and 2 weeks after that, finally memorized. And so,
Wow.
um, once we made that shift and we were able to tweak a couple more things just to be in alignment with that, then I really went into memorization mode. But that was the point where I really felt like this could be an Esther talk. This could be something where God shines
Mm,
between the lines. And that was my prayer that, you know, it's not out on YouTube yet. Hopefully by the time this airs, it will be, and we can put that link in the show notes for folks. But
yes.
what my
Definitely.
prayer was like, Lord, all the hundreds of thousands of people that are going to see this on the TED
Yeah.
platform, let it speak to them. Let it help them see that you have given them a purpose, that there is a need for them to be bold and to get their message out to
Mm,
change the world, and that there's a community waiting for them if they need one, right?
yes.
And just
So true.
use it in their lives and let it bring them back so we can keep building this kingdom for you.
Mm,
And that was really my prayer as I continued to memorize. And so my
yeah.
15-year-old son was my number one memorization help. And he and I would go over this talk like multiple times a day. I'm sure he probably had it memorized way before I did, but such a blessing to have my kids
Mm,
involved and to have them see
yeah.
mom stretching for something that was hard, right? Because I don't
Mm,
want them to ever hit their mid 40s and think, oh, I can't do that. It's too hard. And
yeah. Yeah.
if
That's
it's something
huge.
you believe in, God can help you do it, and He can put people in your life to help you do it. And for me, that was my teenage son, and I'm so grateful. Um,
So, but when you actually got to go, did he get to go with you, or who actually went with you to the actual TEDx? And I don't know what the rules are about how many people you can bring or any of
yeah.
that kind of stuff. So, how was
Well,
that
so
experience for you actually there?
it's interesting because everyone is different depending on where they're hosting it, right? Each individual
Gotcha.
volunteer host gets to find their own location, but it has to meet the TED specs in terms of cameras
Mm,
and having an audience and, different things
yeah.
like that. But so in our case, the talk that we got accepted for was TEDx Greenhouse Road in Houston.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
the individual that was organizing it had contracted for a small local studio to be able
Oh,
to do
neat.
it in their studio, which was really cool because most of the time you see TEDx with like a really dark background. And
Yeah.
ours was filmed like in this white box, like literally
Oh,
this
wow.
beautiful white box. The light was amazing in there, but it had very small, very limited space for the audience. And
Gotcha.
so the way that TEDx pays for itself, the way they could pay to rent the studio and hire the team and the editors and all of that is by selling tickets to the event. And
Yeah.
so each speaker that was approved for that day, there was 12 of us. Each speaker was allowed to bring three guests and
Mm.
up to three guests, and each guest had to buy a ticket to be
Oh,
able to
wow.
come. And so there was session number one with six speakers and their guests. And then session number two was six speakers and their guests for the
Gotcha.
day and with a small
Gotcha.
reception in between. And I don't know if they do that everywhere, but that was our experience for this one.
Interesting.
And so it was really cool to be able to do it. Actually, there are a lot of Christian films are filmed at this studio for the one studio in Houston.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it was really cool to see that overlap of God working even in the space that we're in, right? To make
Yeah.
connections and to be able to do that. And so my son did not get to come with us, but my husband came. I told
Oh,
people I brought my best client, a good friend of mine who's also a client. I brought my
I
best
love it.
cousin who's been my best cheerleader all my life, and I brought my best husband, my only husband, right?
Only
But
husband. Yeah.
but then there was extra tickets, and so
Oh,
they
wow.
allowed us to just put it out there if anyone else wanted to come. And someone that I'd known from our Eagles group with the late Dan Miller
Yeah.
lived in town, and he said, Gary said, I'd love to be there. And so we had an
Yeah.
additional friend. And so like, it just meant the world
That
to be able to walk into that studio knowing I was prepared, knowing that God had this, and knowing that I had like four amazing supporters there who had my back.
oh,
Like it was
wow.
amazing to feel so loved and supported during that whole experience. And
I'm
um, it
Yeah,
was
I
just a
mean, that's huge
wonderful,
because you 'cause
wonderful day.
you're in yeah, because 'cause you're in the studio, you said, that just it's amazing place, you're looking out, you're seeing your 3, as you kept, main supporters, but also your 4th one, there that
Yeah,
was just unexpected, right? So God's
yeah.
continuing to deliver. So you're looking out, you're doing your speech that you've memorized that God has already been working through in amazing ways. Did you have any moment, and this could be hard, because 'cause I'm sure I just as a speaker myself, I'm like, sometimes you get so tied into everything that's going on. It's not until later that you replay and go, oh yeah, I remember that person reacting in this way, or so was there a moment during your as you're speaking that you looked out and you saw your people and it just became like that moment for you, or was this something that you realized maybe after the event?
I think there was just a gratitude. When you speak at TEDx, they have the big red dot. And I
Yeah.
had I
Yeah.
had asked in advance, do I have to stand just in the dot or am I allowed to move?
Yeah.
And it came down to, because of the studio space and the angles of the cameras and things like that, like we did have to stay in the dot, but at least it was about 4 or 5 feet wide. You did have a little bit of room to move. And I just remember feeling a huge gratitude that I felt so comfortable on
Mm,
stage.
yeah.
Because I got to go second to last. I was number 11 of 12 for the day.
Oh, wow.
And so I got to watch the others give their speeches first.
Mm,
And to have the confidence that I had stepping out there and to be able to feel so comfortable on stage and not feel frozen to the dot,
yes.
but to have the freedom to move. And I won't give it away, but they also allowed me to bring in a special prop for the talk
Ooh.
and have that
Ooh,
on
now I'm
stage
so
with me.
curious.
And so it really, I really felt good about that. And it
Yes.
was just, it was just really awesome. But then looking out, like you said, looking out at the audience, I mean, of course, my people are sitting front and center.
Yep. Yep.
And you're going, just please don't make a face at me, right? Um,
Yes.
but as I started watching the others that did not know me prior to today, and seeing their faces as the message resonated with them in the room,
Mm,
I was just so grateful. And it is still fresh, and it makes me emotional because all of that work going into this, and all of that, will this land, Lord, can we get your message through without using your name? And seeing it resonate on the faces of the others who were previously unfamiliar with us to this
yeah.
point. And um the congratulations afterwards, and like it was just
Mm.
an amazing experience.
I love that. So to tie all this together, and this is so hard. I feel like you and I could probably do like a whole series of podcasts together, but to tie this whole experience together, you've got people out there that are maybe like myself. I still dream about doing TEDx. Don't know if it's in the cards, waiting to see if God gives me that. But if for that one person, for those couple people out there that go, you know what, I know God has called me to do this, to step out. And Katie, I'm scared. You got
Hmm.
some of those people that are like, I am scared to actually step out and do this. Do you have a specific encouragement to those people today to maybe take the next step, or that maybe can't see, they expect it to look a certain way, and we know that God does it different ways, so they're
Hmm.
just scared and they're frozen so for those people that may be quote frozen to the dot, as you say, to actually step out, what is a message, what is a piece of encouragement that you can offer them today?
I would say, you know what you're called to do. You know what lights you up. You know what you're drawn to. You know what God is already moving in your heart to do. And if that's a TEDx, like, go for it. Make the commitment and do it. If God has brought you this far, He's going to get you through that next challenge, right? And the other thing that I would say is, once you've committed to it, the thing that can keep you moving, we get stuck when we feel isolated. A flamingo in isolation dies. Okay. Flamingos
Mm,
can't survive by themselves. They need that flock and that flamboyance around them. And so the second thing I would say is, find a community that can support you through the process. I didn't do this by myself. I had friends that were like, yes, you so need to do this. Here's who I worked with. Here's what I did. Here's how to get started. I had my family that was supportive. Like, okay, mom needs time to practice. Leave her alone, or my son, like, mom, do you need to run through it again today? Like, I was on a
yeah.
trip. I was speaking at 2 retreats the week prior to this TED talk. And so I went
Wow.
straight from those into the TED experience over the weekend. I was calling my son on the phone, and we were like doing the video thing as I'm practicing to him one more time before I
Oh,
go out
love
there,
it.
right? And
Love it.
I couldn't have done this by myself. It takes a community. And but I believe, knowing your God, knowing the purpose that He's awakening in you, committing to do that, He says He'll do it through you. First Thessalonians 5:24 is one of my favorite verses of all time. And it says,
Mm,
faithful is He that calls you, who also will do it. And so, if this is God's calling on your life, this is how He wants to impact more people through you, then you don't even have to do it by yourself. He says He will do it through you. You just have to be willing.
I love that. Katie, so many good things. Thank you so much. If you would like to connect with Katie, well, Katie, before we do that, I know that I'm going to put a link, obviously. I mean, I'm hoping this releases. We still got a little bit before this episode releases. So I'm praying that it has released by then. If not, I will update this to make sure that we put that video underneath and you guys can read that in the comments or the notes below. But also, Katie, if people want to connect with you, what is the easiest way that they can connect with you and get some of your resources?
Well, our website is TheFlamingoAdvantage.com. And you can find all of our links to all of our resources, our membership, our free communities, our social media, our YouTube channel. It's all right there at TheFlamingoAdvantage.com.
I love that. Thank you. And if you're listening and you're going, wow, I hear what Katie's saying, and definitely check out Katie's resources. And if you're trying to connect with a community and you're just like not knowing where to even start, that is what Step Out and Thrive does. You can find a link to our free community at bethanybourne.com and jump in. We would love to connect with you there. And also, more than anything, I hope that you hear from Katie and myself today that you are not alone. You have a community here, but you also have a community that what God's already doing in and through you. So we're praying for you this week that you can get the encouragement, get the care, get the resources, get the community that you need to dare to do more than just survive and to step out and thrive boldly in the calling that God has helped you to do. So with that being said, we'll have Katie maybe back next week for a little bit more discussion into the business part of all of this. But until then, dare to do more than just survive, step out and thrive. See you guys next week. Bye.